recording.
Today on Ag Talk, we're talking about healthy living, and in the agriculture world, sometimes you have ups and downs in money situations. So stay with us, we'll be right back.
Hey, glad you could stay with us. Talking about healthy living, and that healthy living and goes through a lot of different parts of our life. What we eat,
Yeah.
how we exercise or don't exercise,
Yep.
financial life,
Yep.
social media.
Could be,
that can
yeah.
affect you.
Yep.
All kinds of stuff.
Yep, absolutely.
And today we've got some special guests.
We do.
Who do we have?
We have Amanda and Amy. Amanda and Amy, please go ahead and give us a little bit of information about you, where you're located, or with the university or Ohio State University, and maybe a little bit of how long you've been there and things like that.
All right, well, I'll start. My name is Amanda Woods. I'm the Healthy Finances Program Specialist with OSU Extension Family and Consumer Sciences. So I work with the state office.
I'm Amy Meehan. I also work in the state office for OSU Extension Family and Consumer Sciences, and I'm the Healthy People Program Specialist. And so with our job titles and positions, we support and help any of our county members all across the state in relation to our Healthy People programming, so health and wellness related programming, and then also Healthy Finances programming, anything related to finances. Amanda's been here for how long now?
So this is my 4th year with Extension.
And I'll be going on 2 this April.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining us. We were talking about healthy living, and obviously, and I know both of you, Amy and Amanda, we've had you on other shows, and you have a show yourself. We talk about some activities, like one show we did about hiking and stuff. Amanda, tell us a little bit about hiking, or maybe what we should be talking about hiking, if we're talking about, having poles to walk with, or
being
things like that.
prepared to go
Yeah,
out.
kind of
Say
being prepared.
Say I'm going out to the Old Man's Cave area or something.
Yeah.
Which has got a lot of stairs and rocks and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so I did a show with Dan Remley on hiking, and so the topic of that day was specifically day hikes.
Yep.
So Old Man's Cave, or a lot of the trail systems in Hocking Hills in the Athens area, can be considered pretty good day hikes. For that show, we talked a lot about preparedness when it came to clothing. And so the biggest tip that I have there is just paying attention to the weather. Obviously, you want to be dressed for the weather, dress in layers if it's colder, always bring a raincoat, those sorts of things. So just kind of know the kind of day that you're getting yourself into if you're going out to a trail really anywhere. Other than that, I would suggest being prepared really for anything that could happen in a day. So if your hike is supposed to take 4 or 5 hours, you always want to have an emergency situation planned for. I've been out on a trail and have gotten lost before, and so it's nice to have maybe an emergency shelter, an extra pair of clothes, extra food, always have more than enough water or a way to filter water if you're going somewhere that you're not going to be able to refill your water. Having some kind of system in place to be able to filter water would be helpful. Obviously, you're not going to always need some kind of emergency backup, but it's always good to be prepared, especially if you're unsure of where you're going. And lastly, I would say, always know the trail that you're going and understand what's waiting for you there, and make sure it fits where you are with your activity level and where you are as far as your health goes. So there are a lot of stairs at Old Man's Cave. So for somebody that might be a bit challenging, just being aware and being prepared, and really understanding how prepared you are to take on that trail. So if it's your first day hike, I think, Hocking Hills has some great hikes, but just being aware of what your level is when you're going out there, and understanding to take it slow, and just understanding kind of where you're at.
Now, one of the things that my wife found out, which I prepared for, was shoes.
Shoes.
I had hiking boots on, and
Okay.
she had just regular sneakers that have like a slick
Yeah.
bottom. And you know, the rocks and stuff, she was not getting near the traction I was. And we took the dogs with us, and that's another thing. Make sure your dogs mind well. You know, one of them was not minding her very well.
Right.
And just about dragged her down the stairs.
Oh, that's not good.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like see another person or they get in a hurry. You want them to stay with you.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, clothing, if it gets cooler in the day or if you change altitude, you might want a jacket or you might want to be able to remove it a little bit if you get warm.
So I have a question that just actually Mike just kind of triggered. Taking your animals hiking with you or exercise, is there anything, Amanda, and it's perfectly okay, I know, how do we plan to take our animals with us? You know, maybe,
I can
mean,
tell
obviously we take extra water?
Yes,
You
water.
you guys have big dogs.
Right.
So,
a water, collapsible drinking bowl,
yeah?
and let's see, a little baggie.
Oh, to pick up the other side of the dog, the back side.
Right.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
So, you know, I'm sure
Gotcha.
Old Man's Cave doesn't want dog poo laying around
Well, I
everywhere.
guess that's true,
And
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, you leave no trace.
So, so in some of your trainings, do you ever mention bringing animals with you for exercise purposes?
We don't, but I think that's a great thing to consider. I've been on a lot of trails and met
Yeah.
a lot of dogs. And I think the biggest thing to consider, there's a couple of things.
Uh-huh.
If you're taking your dog for a walk, I think that's great. It's good for your dog to be exercised. It gets you out. And for a lot of people, I think it gives them a reason to be out and be
Yeah.
more active. And so I think that's great. Again, understanding your animal's limitations. I personally have two senior dogs.
Yeah.
They're 12 and 13 years old, so
Right.
they're not going to climb a mountain with me. They have zero interest in that.
Right.
But understanding your animal's limitations. And I think the other big thing is making sure that your animals are under your control. So when you take your pet out hiking with you, you know, I've been in the mountains of North Carolina, like in the middle of nowhere, and had, you know, animals run out of nowhere. And I love dogs. But I think for safety purposes, keeping your dogs under your control, under direct control. So if they're leash trained to where they'll come when you call them back, if they're trained well enough to do that, then, you know, keep them in a short distance, always within your sight. But I would never just assume that it's okay to let your dogs roam off leash. So I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to trail etiquette, is to really, really make sure that your animals are under your control at all times. It's good for your safety, it's good for their safety, and it's good for other people's safety as well. So those would be my little tips when it comes to that. But outside of that, yeah, you want to pack food for your animal just the same as you would for yourself.
Yep.
You want to pack water for your animal, and you want to always kind of keep in mind what the trail is like, or the pavement is like. If it's winter and trails are icy or whatever, then kind of plan accordingly as well for the safety of their paths.
Right. And there's places like Bob Evans Farm where I take my dogs off leash,
Yeah.
and you know, I can see a quarter mile down the road, so I'm okay. But there's been times where I wanted to get their attention.
Yeah.
Keep your eyes on me, because if they'd seen the 3 skunks in the field,
Oh, they would have went after him.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
and we would have had more problems.
Oh yeah, that would have been a smelly ride home for sure.
Yeah, and one other question, Amanda, about hiking and stuff. Would you ever plan for animals out in the woods, say snakes or something that you stepped on one accidentally?
Oh, deer,
You know,
bear.
do you? Yeah.
Yeah, I have accidentally
Yeah.
stepped on snakes before. It's not a great thing to
Yeah.
find out of nowhere, but they're out there too. So the thing about hiking is that you're in the wilderness, like you're in their home essentially. So I would say, with most animals, noise is a great thing to take with you. So if a bear or a snake or something else that you don't want to come across hears you coming, the likelihood that they'll leave the trail in the direct area that you are is good. So that's why a lot of places will have encourage you to maybe scream "Hey bear" when you're hiking, or shuffle your feet when you're walking. Keep a tin of pennies or something in your backpack. Just make noise, and more often than not, you're not going to find something that's unwanted. But you are, again, out in the middle of the woods, so bugs are going to happen. I would always be prepared. If you're going on a day hike or even multi-day, taking some kind of repellent that you can pack easily with you. And then a first aid kit for sure, just in case something bites you. I've been stung by bees on the trail before. It happens. You're in the wilderness. It's kind of the beauty of nature, right? But it's going to sometimes bite back. So just be prepared for, all of those things. But I don't really think, bear preparedness is a big issue here in Ohio, but just understanding how to pack food for any animals is really another kind of important key too. So keeping your food secured properly and usually hung from a tree or not in your tent. Those sorts of things. Really just kind of understand what is where you're going, and then you can be better prepared for it.
Yeah, there's medium-sized cats and coyotes now too.
Yeah, there is starting to be a few more oddball.
Getting in fights.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Okay. Amy, what's you're more? I think we talked about some food preparations, and what was it? Were you freezing something? I don't remember now. I've lost my train of thought on our last show that we did, but you were preparing things ahead of time, and having them
at home or on a trail.
well, both. I think. Am I right there, Amy?
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
I think meal prepping can apply to a lot of different situations. So I personally do it to eat at home or at work in just kind of a healthier, more portion controlled way. But definitely would be a great idea to have, whether you're on the trail or you're doing farm work out around your homestead. This can work for anything. And it saves you kind of time and money by giving you that type of convenience meal through having already cooked the food, pre-portioned it. It's in a storage container that you can easily take with you. And if you keep like an ice pack with it to keep it better temperature controlled, that's good. Or you can come up with food items that you would take on the trail that you might not need temperature control. So things with peanut butter or dried fruits or things like that would last a little bit longer would be good. So there are lots of different ways that you can utilize meal prepping for whatever your situation might be.
Yeah, I just thought of something that I've done in the past. If I go hiking in a place I don't know, there are apps that like trace your steps.
Oh, that kind of draws you a map or something?
Right, it draws where you've been.
Yeah.
So that you can like retrace yourself back out.
Okay.
You can tell where you are and where you need to be.
That's interesting. Unless your phone dies, loses the battery.
Right.
Yeah. I guess you can think of it that way. So.
Yeah, I will say that I at one time relied on a map that was on my phone that was not saved. It was on an internet browser, and we obviously lost GPS, and that is actually when we got lost.
Yep.
We did find our way back. We took a paper map from the trailhead, which inevitably was what helped us. But tech is great and super helpful if you've got service or a GPS that can, help you out if you're willing to invest in that sort of thing. But yeah.
I got a question about the food prep. Amy, do you freeze it, or do you just put it in the fridge, or things like that? And I guess my question is, how long can you leave things like that if you freeze them? Is there a week, kind of thing, or what?
So it varies. The usual recommendation is probably around a month for best food quality. And there is a way to kind of freeze things safely, properly, depending on what kind of foods it is, how you portion it out. You definitely want either a food grade zip storage bag or a type of plastic freezer safe material storage container that you can put into your freezer to help prevent freezer burn, things like that. So freezing food is definitely recommended as part of meal prepping to help kind of stretch your prep. So a lot of times you're cooking in really big batches, and that's great to get you through the week. But if you have extras, it would be good to pre-portion them and freeze them to then put into future week rotations to add a little extra variety to your menu without having to do any extra work.
Okay. And what foods would be the best to freeze? I mean, obviously, is there some that you really shouldn't be freezing? Or, any particular kind of food?
There's definitely some produce that might not be as good frozen. For instance, like with a banana, you'd want to peel that banana first rather than leaving the peel on. So also just kind of different ways of how you go about freezing things. I found that sometimes carrots can get a little mushy if they're pre-cooked and go into the freezer. But if you freeze them before they're cooked and take them out and cook them after the fact, then they usually are a little bit better quality. It's not necessarily a safety issue more than it is a quality issue. So it just depends on how you go about freezing things. And I would definitely recommend whenever you freeze anything to put it in an airtight container, not to have any air around it. Even if you put, let's say, a portion of something into a plastic container, maybe putting a layer of saran wrap on top to kind of keep any air off that surface so that you don't get any freezer burn, really just for quality's sake.
Okay, that's makes sense to me. I think anyway. I'm still green at this freezing and reusing food
There's
a lot.
certain things. There's, you know, I'm not a real big fan of frozen fruit like strawberries because they, like she said, they get mushy.
They get a little mushy.
It's not the same as off the vine.
Oh well, I agree there. When I go there, it's like straight off the vine, right in the middle mouth.
Right.
Right. You just follow the row. Yeah.
Yeah, frozen fruit's definitely better for going straight into a smoothie or something, not thawing out to eat otherwise. That would definitely be much mushier at the end.
So, along with the meal prep for hiking or on the
farm. Why
farm.
are we doing the meal prep?
Well, obviously we're either saving money or saving time, or well, I guess both in the long run.
So you're not doing any activity. This is like, I've already got a meal frozen in the fridge.
Yeah.
And then I put it in the microwave or whatever, reheat it, and I'm good to go.
Yeah.
I don't have to go through that same process every night.
Getting it ready. Or, for instance, I'm going to say lunch is probably the biggest thing that I use it for.
Right.
Is
well,
you know, like if
leftovers.
leftovers, you know, but I put them in a a container. I guess it's a safe container. I guess I think so anyway. And you know, I'll put it in the fridge, or if we think there's enough, like soup. You know, a lot of times we'll make a great big pot of vegetable soup.
Right.
Well, rather than setting it in the fridge, we may freeze half of it, but we'll put it in little, you know, enough that it'll be about maybe 3 or 4 bowls or 2 bowls, and just bring out that one piece. Am I thinking that right, Amy? Is that about what you should do?
Definitely, I think portion control is a big part of the convenience factor behind meal prep as well. So it can be really good from just a health and kind of weight loss perspective if you even want to go that far. So if you make like a big pan of something and you just try to eyeball a portion that you're putting on your plate once at a time, you can usually overestimate, especially with the size of our plates typically. So by portioning it out ahead of time and putting it into containers that are an appropriate size for whether it's a meal or a snack, that's why that can be super helpful as well. So instead of paying tons of money to get onto a meal delivery program or some type of nutrition service that would send you pre-portioned meals, you can now do that yourself. So that's kind of another factor that meal prepping is really important for.
Makes sense.
Okay, how about, like you were saying, the containers? Is there something I shouldn't put in the microwave, like plastics? I've heard if there's different plastics that you shouldn't put in there that leach out certain things.
Sure. So the research is still out a little bit on it. Definitely, if you can find plastic without BPA in it, that would be good because there can be potentially some leaching happening. But a good kind of safe rule of thumb would be if you want to reheat something, have a glass container. That'll be a lot safer to go to reheat. And plastic would be better for if you don't need to reheat it or if you're going to put it in the freezer because you don't want to put the glass into the freezer and risk that break. So having a mix of the two can be helpful.
So as we freeze stuff and we take it out, Amy, is it a good idea to refreeze it, or you should never do that?
It really depends, especially how long it's been thawing for. Again, it really just comes back down to quality. So the more often that you change that temperature, the more likely you're going to have that potential for freezer burn and oxygen getting into the food and allowing for that. So it'll just kind of dry the food out. So it won't be as great the next time around. But absolutely, if you take something out of the freezer and put it in your fridge to start thawing, likely it'll take a few days for it to fully thaw. So if you decide in the next day, oh, actually, I don't really need this right now, you can pop it back in the freezer and it's probably pretty good to go.
But if it's completely thawed, and say maybe you heat it up and again, you didn't eat it all.
You're right, you didn't finish it.
Can you put it back in the freezer? Is it not
So you could, depending on when you froze it. So usually the shelf life of our food in a fridge is 3 to 4 days for prepared foods.
Okay.
So if you froze it on like that 4th day, then really you're kind of out of time. So you just want to consume it right away. But if you froze it on the 1st day and then you let it thaw and sit in your fridge for a little bit and it's only been maybe 2 days in the fridge, then you could perhaps put it back in the freezer. But again, at that point, it's still that quality issue, not necessarily food safety, but just quality. Would you really want to then eat that food that's been frozen, reheated, frozen again? At that point, is it worth it, I suppose?
Yeah.
Yeah, when should you put the pizza in the fridge? Should it be?
Does it ever go in the fridge?
I don't know. Do you just wait?
I didn't think pizza. I didn't think you had to put pizza in the fridge.
I feel like
You can
most
leave pizza in a
colleges
box
do
for
with you.
days, and people still eat it. I don't get it. I can only eat it right when it comes from the oven, and that's it. You put pizza in the fridge, I'm done.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I don't know why, but I can't do it. But other people, it'll stay there in the box for days, not even put it in the fridge.
My husband loves to eat cold pizza. I really don't get it. But really,
And why do they want it for breakfast?
Right, yeah, I don't know. But the rule of thumb with when you put food away is if it started out hot, you have 4 hours without temperature control before you need to get it down to that 40 degrees or below, which would be the temperature of your fridge.
Yeah.
If the food started out cold, then you have about 6 hours before it needs to go back under temperature control. But the most conservative rule of thumb that we like to tell a lot of people, just to be extra safe, especially depending if you have a weakened immune system, if you're really young or you're elderly, things to consider, 2 hours is really kind of the general guideline there for any food to make sure that it goes under temperature control.
Well, the main thing I was thinking too was you don't want to put hot food in your fridge because it's going to warm up your fridge. You wait till it gets a little room temperature, then you put it in, then it'll continue getting cool.
Is that a good rule of thumb?
That's definitely something that we get questions about in our food safety classes. And what we like to say about that is it really depends on the type of container that you're in, number one. So if it's not a lot of food in a shallow container, that can go straight into the fridge. But the recommendation would be to leave the lid cracked so that the steam can escape as the temperature is changing. Because the risk with that is if you close the lid and it traps the steam in there, then it could potentially keep your food at a higher temperature for a little too long in what we call the temperature danger zone, which is where the bacteria can grow, which kind of defeats the purpose of putting it in the fridge altogether. So you can definitely put it in right away. Depending on how hot the pan is or how hot your storage containers are after you've transferred the food, you might want to put like a silicone mat or something down that would protect the surfaces of your refrigerator, or if you have a wire rack in the middle, that would be fine to put it on. If you have a big batch of something that you made, instead of putting the whole stock pot or the casserole dish into the fridge, you'll have too much temperature variation depending on how thick or dense your food item is. So what we recommend is that you break that down and put it into storage containers, usually no thicker than like 1 inch in height. And that way you have a more even distribution for the food to cool properly. And then after you put all the food in those storage containers, you then don't want to stack them either, because then you'll get a similar thing like the stock pot where you'll have heat trapped in the middle, and so you'll have spots that might not go down to temperature in enough time. So if you can spread it out throughout your fridge too, that would be ideal. So that's kind of how we recommend. The goal would be to put the food into the fridge as quick as you can if you're not going to use it right away, to give you a little more shelf life on it and to keep it safe, but you just have to do it in the right way so that you don't have any temperature variation that are too great within your fridge to put food in a potential position where bacteria could be growing.
My problem is remembering when I put it in there. I guess,
Yeah. Get just a little Sharpie.
When did we eat that?
Yeah.
Yep.
We do
Was that a week ago?
It gets shoved back into the fridge,
right.
and it's like, oh, wait a minute, what's that back there? It's green.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be red or something. Who knows? So, okay, so we've talked a little bit about exercising, hiking, how we should eat, maybe if we have animals going with us and such. So all of this activity and purchasing of freezer equipment or all this stuff requires money. So we do this stuff to try to save money, right? So Amanda, you've got some good tips on money saving, kind of things that we can do to save or set it aside and not see it. Is that what I understand?
Yes. So one of the things that I like to talk about whenever I have the chance is the importance of building an emergency savings. So studies often find that over half of Americans don't have an emergency savings to pull from in the face of some kind of financial emergency. So your car breaks down, something in your house breaks, whatever it is, you get sick, you get injured, and you don't have the money to pull from to address that financial emergency. These things can be, serious for many people who can't do that. So car breaks down, can't afford to fix it, can't get to work, lose your job. Like these things can be pretty detrimental for people who are not prepared. And so what I like to do is just encourage people to work on building that emergency savings. I know it can be really frustrating when we don't think that we have the money to save. And so my biggest tip is to start saving automatically. So a little bit every paycheck. You can set it up through your employer typically, or even through your bank, to have a certain portion of your income go into a separate savings product that's a little bit more difficult for you to get to. And so what this does is little by little, without you having to think about doing it, it automatically builds a savings for you. And it can be obviously whatever it is that you can afford to do. But that would be my biggest bit of advice, is to start saving and to do it automatically.
So if we set it up to auto into this other account, and is what we're saying.
Yes.
Is that something that you would set up in the same bank that you normally do, or would you even go to a different bank?
So I think that kind of depends on you and your behavior when it comes to your money. So I have mine go to a savings product within my same bank. And that way it's accessible if I need it to be, but it's not my checking account. It's not attached to anything that I use regularly. But for some people, having easy access to those funds will be a problem. So in that case, sure, set it up to go to a different savings product in a different bank. There are also, there's certain fintechs, so financial technology, that can allow you to be saving automatically in not a bank. So in an app, they can roll over extra money from your purchases, those sorts of things. So there's really a lot of different ways to save automatically. And I think the key is to finding the right product and the right way that works for you. So something that you won't feel as tempted to touch, but that will still work for you in the event of a financial emergency.
Okay.
I've seen a little bit on the shutdown.
Oh, yeah, the government shutdown. Yeah.
These people.
Right. When you don't get paid,
Right.
you have to lean on something.
Right.
And
And everybody was so surprised, like they don't have 1, 2, 3 months worth of
backup money.
Not a lot of people do.
No,
Yeah.
not when you a lot of times most of us live paycheck to paycheck in some
Right.
cases.
Right. And we're not even talking about, like I don't know the numbers of Americans that have, 3 to 6 months paycheck, but we're talking half of us don't even have $500 in emergency savings. So it's important to save. It's just really hard it can be very challenging, which is why we suggest that people do start automatically, because when it's done for you and it's happening without you having to actually do it, it builds up. And then I think you start to see that those behaviors really are building that savings. So
Okay.
yeah, it's a challenge, but
Great.
I mean, I think the government shutdown kind of highlighted that challenge a little bit more than we normally see, where we have gainfully employed, Americans who are having their paychecks withheld, and who were struggling to make ends meet. And so, these are things that it's good to be prepared, but it's a challenge when it's everyone struggles with this for sure.
Amy, Amanda, it's great having you on. We've run out of time as usual. We always have lots of other questions, but we'll bring you back and we'll ask some more great questions hopefully.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for having us.
So until next time, we will see everyone later.